Hi, I'm Jared Lombardo, and welcome to Episode 7 of the Conventional Podcast. This episode is the first of two episodes about NondesCon, an annual anime convention in Denver that I have volunteered at every year since 2001. Each year, the convention staff are invited to join the board of directors camping at Cherry Creek State Park in Aurora, Colorado. These recordings were recorded at the campground in June 2018, so there is some birdsong and breeze in these recordings. In this episode, I interview three of the NondesCon directors, each in different roles and with different experiences at the con.
My name is Jeremy Pita. I am the director of NDK, of technology, video gaming, pachinko, and I'm the guy they put on stage first, much to their eternal dismay. I'm the guy who goes on stage first, so I'm the MC, as it were, of NDK. Plus, I run around and fix all the technical issues. So, if it runs on electricity, I fix it. Usually.
So you've been with the con a really long time. How'd you get started?
Oh, for the love of God, that's a story in and of itself. I got started way back in about, I would say, 89, maybe that, working security for a local science fiction convention called Starfest. And Starfest has been going on for years and years. It's one of the old grand dames of the Colorado convention circuit. And I got started there working security, like I said, way back in 89 about. I've been going to cons obviously for years prior because my mom obviously got me into Star Trek at a very young age, like she should have. And so I was going to cons, and so I started working them in 89, and then I started doing my first convention. My first NDK was 1998. I started going to NDK in 1998, and then since all my friends were working security at Starfest, and some of them kind of got an idea to come over to this anime convention, start doing security for them. They said, "Hey, do you want to come work security for this anime convention?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So first con was in 97. I was attending in 98, and I was working it by 99. And then I just kind of went up the ranks until the executive director at the time kind of sat me and Amanda, my wife, down and said, "Hey, do you guys want to run a con?" And our eyes got as big as dinner plates, and we were like, "What? You can do that?" Huh, well, yeah, this might be pretty fun. So, yeah, she sat us down, and we've been kind of running it ever since. And that was in 2005, I think? 2005, 2006, sometime around there. So, yeah, no, I've been going to cons since I was knee-high to a grasshopper and working them almost longer. So, yeah, that's how we got started in conventions. I've been around the scene for a lot longer than I care to admit, but that's all right.
Well, you just admitted to it.
I did.
The whole world might know.
The whole world will know. Well, secret's out. Good job, guys. Yay.
So what makes you want to run cons versus just being an attendee?
Running cons, honestly, it allows me a much greater sense of community and companionship than just kind of going to cons, because just going to cons, everybody's your friend, but working a con, you're all playing together for a common good. You're all marching towards the same goal. You're all trying to get this thing off the ground, and whatever this thing is, it has a tendency to bring people together. Has a tendency to give us a sense of community that is sometimes lacking in our respective fandoms here and there. But where the working con is one of those things where you find family. You find family quick. You find lifelong friends the second you do it. And you are always immersed in the thing that you love. You love anime? Great. You get to work a con. Now you get to work a room where this guy's going to come and talk for 20 minutes. And you might be working there for 4 hours, but you're doing good. You're doing good something for the community. And so that's kind of what drug me to it, is the fact that, I could be a fan, or I could be a super fan and work and really kind of get into it. So that really helped. That's why I like working them rather than going. Going's fun too, but working, you got a sense of purpose. It's really, really nice.
Do you attend or work at any other shows than NDK?
I usually try to go to Starfest, which is like the local sci-fi con. I always obviously go to Starfest. I try to hit on other conventions as they come up. Unfortunately, because running NDK is usually so busy for me and my wife, it's really, really hard for us to get away for a weekend just kind of out of the blue. We usually have to plan like a year in advance if we're going to go to a convention. And it's usually for NDK. So yeah, I'll go visit other anime cons around the country, and kind of see what they do, and kind of see what they're about, so that we can, just try to make the best show we can over here in Colorado. But yeah, it's kind of fun. So I try to attend as much as possible, but unfortunately, because I'm so busy running around, I don't get the chances nearly as often as I would like. But yeah, it's always out there.
From other conventions, what are some of the things you've learned and brought back to NDK?
Other conventions, it really kind of depends on the con, though, because there are some conventions that are really good at cosplay and really good at cosplay management, and there are some conventions that are really good at showing media and making sure that, like the dealer's room is huge and their video rooms are well attended and advertised well, that kind of stuff like that. So it really kind of depends on what the con's good at. We've brought back a ton of knowledge about crowd management from almost every single place we go, because every single place we go has a different hotel, different convention center, different way of moving people around and kind of managing the throngs of fans that always show up to a convention. So moving people like chess, players on a chessboard is kind of what we're into. We want to make sure that nobody is too crowded, that everybody has something to see, that there's always usually something for people to do and something interesting to be around at all times. And so going into other conventions kind of shows us, oh, they have, this booth here that will entertain the people for doing that part of things. And this thing over here where the people in line are not so bored and they're not, ripping the wallpaper off the walls. That would suck, So it's always very interesting to try and see where the people have moved and how things are set up and where other conventions' focuses are, because then we can find a way to kind of enhance that focus in our show and try to make sure that, obviously, everybody runs good shows, everybody runs good stuff.
You mentioned also being on stage. Other than like the emceeing here, had you ever done performance of any kind, or?
I'd taken a drama class in high school, as everybody surely has, but no, honestly, they kind of threw me up on stage, and I don't know why. I have no idea how, but I find myself with a microphone screaming at 1,000 kids at the beginning of con and at the end of con, and it's slightly off-putting to kind of see that happen when you have a little bit of social anxiety, like I'm sure all of us do, and the fact that somebody, kind of runs and says, hey, do you want to be up on stage? And you're like, what? No. But you find yourself on stage. They're like, well, here's a microphone and go do your thing. And you're like, what thing? I don't know what to do. So I get up there and I try to just be as entertaining as humanly possible. But yeah, anything that I was taught, you don't really get taught anything. You just throw you up on stage and you're trying to do your best to try to make sure that you're as entertaining as possible. And that's all I try and do. And it's worked so far, I think. I mean, my mom likes what I do. I'll say that. That's pretty fun. Yeah, I'm impressing at least one person out there. So that's all that is. And it's scary as hell every single time. Every single time. You're shaking in your boots every single time. It's like, what jokes am I going to tell this time? What am I going to say this time? Oh yeah, by the way, don't ramble like I'm doing now. Don't do that. Jeez, Christ, don't do that.
Well, if it's so scary every time, how do you get yourself out every time?
I breathe. I keep telling myself that there are people who want to see this. I have no idea who they are, but they want to see this. And for some reason, it tends to work. For some reason, I tend to get up there, and I always have a good time. I'm a Leo by birth, so that means I love to run out on stage, apparently by birth, and that usually tends to happen. That's usually pretty true. You have a little bit of a showman inside you, and as long as you can let that guy out and not let him ruin things, it works. And I don't know how it exactly works, and so I just kind of breathe through it. I shake off the shakes. I start listening to the music, and as soon as I get up on stage, I have information to tell the people, so it's not me just winging it the whole time, which is good. You have a rock to go back to if things start to really get off the rails. You can always look down at the sheet of the things you're supposed to say, and the things that you're supposed to say. That helps. But yeah, it's one of those very, very scary things that you're always absolutely afraid of, that you just get through, that you kind of close your eyes, you step on out, you do it, and by the time you're done with it, you were wondered why you were even scared in the first place. And but that doesn't stop it from being scary, obviously. But that's social anxiety and stage fright for anybody. It's one of those, it's one of those phobias. It's one of those fears that just doesn't make any sense, but you're really scared of it anyway. So, but yeah, you just grit your teeth, get out there and do it. And people, as long as people keep telling me, hey, you did a good job, I guess I'll keep doing it.
Think back on all your years of experience running shows. Is there something that you could tell your younger self that would have made NDK an even better show that you've learned now? Something you wish you had learned sooner?
Don't be so afraid, because there was a lot of personal ways that I kind of held back because I was afraid that people wouldn't like it, and I didn't want to do this and I didn't want to do that. And there was a lot of chances that I could have taken earlier that probably would have paid out a little better. If I wasn't so afraid of, well, I don't know if people are going to like this. I don't know who's going to like me. What are they going to think? And all that. All that is absolutely just digging yourself a hole and not getting anywhere in life or in the convention or in, or in every aspect of life. I hate to say it because I already said life, but that's kind of the point is fear is the mind killer. I mean, I hate to go back to, Frank Herbert, but fear is the mind killer. It stops you from being the person that you want to be and B are destined to be, are meant to be. And I look at things like America's Got Talent, and nowadays I think, well, I could probably do something like that. But way back in the day, I was too afraid to even acknowledge that there was this whole other aspect of me that I really kind of enjoy being, but I just got to get over that first hump of fear to get to. And it's that's kind of hard to acknowledge, as you get older, as you get later, you're kind of sitting here like, man, I could have been X, Y, or Z if I wasn't just so afraid to do it in the first place. Well, that's the thing, is that you got to stop your fear, because not a whole lot good comes of it, and it's ever present sometimes, and you just gotta shut off that part of your brain that's kind of telling you no, stop, and just go for it and do it. Because once you are, you'll get out there on a stage with 1,000 screaming anime fans and love it, and be able to change their lives and be able to do some good in their world, be able to leave this world better than you found it, which is kind of the point, So yeah, fear stops you, and it's harsh. It's a harsh mistress to get out from under.
So in the moment, you breathe, and then you just sort of force yourself out onto the stage when you're afraid that way. But are there long-term solutions you've done to be less afraid about that kind of thing?
You gotta watch out for self-confidence. Self-confidence is a big part of it. You have to know that you're good enough to do the thing that you're supposed to do before you get there, obviously. It's a whole lot of trying to make sure that you're good enough before you step on that stage. And I go back to, obviously, people telling me year over year, Jeremy, you're good at this. You just got to go out and do it. You're good at this. You're good at this. I like watching you. And you're like, oh, okay. But you got to remember that, because that gets lost in the din, lost in the static that is, our minds and society and all the stuff that puts on us. That's a static, and we have to kind of remember that. Oh yeah, I'm good enough to do this. Oh yeah, I can do this. I've done this before. That's easy. I can do this. And so it's a lot of strength to try and remember those, because like I said, those get lost, and to try and hold on to that's where your power is. That's what gets you out on that stage, is the fact that somebody, who you pay attention, you care about, said, hey, I really liked you when you did that. You should probably do that again. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'll get out there and try this again. Why not? It might suck and it might be great, but you know what? I tried, and I know, and I might be good at it. Hell, you might even like it. It's scary to think that you actually might like something that you've been afraid of for years and years and years.
What's one of your favorite things that you've seen or experienced at the con in the last few years?
The joy that people see when they walk down the hallway and see their favorite character done right, usually in cosplay, or the joy that they see when they're dressed in cosplay, maybe not even a very good one, from their favorite series, and they see other people dressed like that too. The coming together of our community, which is not very well represented in normal society. We kind of have to make our own community, but seeing people come into that and seeing the joy on their faces when they sit down and look around, and they think for maybe the first time in their life, I'm not that weird. I'm not this weird outlier. I'm actually part of a group. I'm actually part of a large community. I'm actually part of something that I didn't know I was part of before. That seeing that over and over again at every single convention as we get a new guy in the door, that alone is worth the price of admission. I could just sit there at the bottom of our escalators, because we have escalators as our main point of entry at NDK. You just sit at the bottom of the escalator and just watch people's eyes just go as wide as dinner plates, and they look around. They're like, "What? I'm part of something." Yeah, you're part of something. Come and join us. I mean, really, we're here, and all we're missing is you. You know, so you got to come around. That's the best part. That's the drug. That is the drug. And playing a dance at the same time, watching all the kids bounce around. That's pretty fun too. Because I'll rave all night if you give me a chance to. But yeah. They're running the lights, watching all the kids bounce around. It's the same kind of thing. It's community. Get them all in the same room, and they scream, "I'm part of something." Yeah, you are. You're part of something. Come join us.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Hey, no problem, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, my name is Kelly O'Neill.
How did you get into event work?
It really would be through Jeremy Pita. His buddy in high school, Jeremy Owen, drugged me to the Starkfest convention, to work security for it. And as they progressed and eventually took over NDK, they recruited who they thought were the good people working security at the Starfest conventions. And lo and behold, here I am.
In that time, that was like 15 years ago or something. How has your role changed for NDK?
Well, I started with the merchandising department, which is a little unit. We started to be more advertising for the convention, sell shirts, things of that nature, and took over that department. And then they thought I had a good enough opinion to be part of the board of directors. And that happened about 6 years ago, I believe, at this point. I'm bad with numbers.
Other than Starfest and NDK, have you worked any other shows?
Nothing particularly of note. My wife is involved in a little Fed Cup 5K race at the Federal Center here in Denver, and I pitch in occasionally with that. I've done a little bit of graphic design for them, but nothing too substantial. That's really about it.
What makes you keep going? What do you love about working conventions, or specifically this show?
I suppose I am the most happy with giving people in this fandom a safe space. I like that they have a place that they can come and be themselves and wear whatever they want, and act the fool, and that they can do that without fear of, judgment from their peers or anything like that, that they can just be who they want to be. And that's kind of how I see myself, as just a way to give them that space.
Well, what are some of the things you do to enable that safe space?
I like to be a very accepting individual, and not judge based upon, well, I don't like that show, so therefore I don't like you, or anything like that. I don't know. I suppose it's more of a mental construct I have in my head that I really haven't quantified. Just to have a place to come that I don't think I had when I was young, because, I think we all go through those phases of having to hide your fandom. I mean, I suppose that's more of coming into its own in the recent years, but when I was a kid, it was very much something you were shunned about. You had to be the mainstream, enjoy sports and things like that, and that's just not for everybody. And I guess I'm just happy to let people be who they want to be. I don't know if that's quite what you're looking for.
When you went from being the merch area head to being on the board of directors, did the board tell you why they picked you, or do you? And why were you right for that job?
Well, I suppose that a lot of times, because Tara was on the board, my wife, long before I, and there was often, for one reason or another, I just kind of happened to be there. And this is before we had established a lot of secondary positions like advisors that we didn't always have. And I guess I kind of was our first advisor of sorts. It's like I wasn't a board member, but I still found myself at the meetings and would contribute my opinions, even though, I never saw myself as a board member. It was kind of like, I suppose, being the fifth Beatle, that I wasn't up on stage, but I still had a voice. And I guess that was enough that they valued that opinion enough to add me to the board when we had the position available.
So during the show, you also like go on stage and MC some stuff. How was that for you, and how'd you get into that?
I suppose it was just we had a vacuum, after we'd had a previous board member that normally was part of it leave. And it was just kind of I guess as my status, slight celebrity status in the con, as the guy that happens to kind of look like David Tennant. And most people in the con know me as the Doctor because I resemble David Tennant. And I suppose I just kind of became a visual face of the convention to a point. So it just kind of was a natural evolution to just have me be part of that crew. I don't know that I fill that role particularly well. I try to be the assistant, the Ed McMahon, the Higgins to Jeremy Pitas, Jimmy Fallon or Johnny Carson or whatnot. I don't know that I'm any good at it, but they keep letting me do it. So here we are.
Letting you do it.
Yeah, letting me do it. They don't say, no, that was terrible. That's the last time, buddy. You mumbled your way up there. We need you to stop. No, that hasn't happened yet. So apparently it's working.
Prior to doing that and sort of falling into that position, though, that hadn't been a goal or a thing you had done before? Had you done any performance at all?
Oh, no. None whatsoever. Not the theater kid that everyone assumes, con people are or anything like that. No, it's actually, I kind of freak out about the week before we're doing that main event. And it is such a small thing, but you got to summon all the courage I can muster to get up there and do it. So I still enjoy it, I suppose, but it's arduous, let's put it that way.
Well, if that's arduous, what's one of your very favorite things that you've seen either, every year or in the last few years?
Well, as being part of our graphic design team, I do like designing our merchandising and promotional materials, and I like seeing it out in the wild. I like being around the metro area and, seeing a gaggle of teenagers go by and go, oh, hey, there's, Concert 2 years ago, that I designed or something like that. So I like being more of getting the message out that way, I suppose.
What are some of the difficult times you've had within the graphic design? Like maybe a design you loved that everyone else didn't, or I don't know, just some hardship you had to overcome in that space.
Well, I suppose since it is something I do as an aside, I do have a degree, but it's obviously not my day job. It's hard sometimes to go from my normal day job to shift my mindset into be creative, darn it. You deal with paper and stuff all day, but now you have to make something pretty and be nice and things like that. And deadlines can be tricky, getting our materials done in enough time to be produced and things like that. It's just a matter of finding the right creative space. And once that happens, things kind of go from there.
Are there any techniques you use to help you get to that creative space?
I suppose it's a silly statement to make, but I find myself being a method designer. They say some actors are method actors and they get into character and such. I always try to surround myself with proper music for whatever sort of piece I'm doing. If it's really contemporary or technological, I might put on some dance music or something like that. So that helps me get into the right space based upon what kind of project we're doing.
Are there any other conferences you like to attend? And are there things you learn from those that you bring back to NDK?
Boy, I would love to say that I have more time to do that, but my schedule with the post office is a little restrictive at this point. So, no, I really don't have much other time or ability, I suppose. So, this is NDK is pretty much it.
Knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a lesson to help the con be better, what lesson would you give that younger self?
To not second guess, to trust instinct. Don't bog yourself down in the minutia. Your first impulse, I find, is typically right. Just go with how you first feel.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Kel.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be part of this. Thank you.
So I'm Chris Lang. I'm the Director of Logistics and Operational Technologies at Non-Descon.
How did you get into conventions in the first place?
Well, I actually got into anime conventions specifically because of my anime club at the University of Wyoming way in the 2000s. And basically I got brought to this convention and said, hey, you should go volunteer. And went ahead and volunteered one year, and the next year I was on staff, and then that was my vacation for several years. Was just enjoying the nice, easy logistics life of picking things up, putting them away, tearing down afterwards.
Yes, the easy life of lift and carry. Why were your friends suggesting you volunteer?
Mainly because of my background. I do a lot of volunteering for multiple organizations. At the time, I was a big volunteer in the Boy Scouts of America, which, of course, while they're not conventions, runs many, many events that are basically the size of conventions called camporees and campouts. So I already had a lot of experience with the timing, the planning, and doing the work to get going with something. So it was a nice, natural, go volunteer. Plus, I think they didn't want me to drink my life away at the convention that year. So they told me to go volunteer.
So with Scouts, you can, be a participant, but then you can move into the leadership and organizational roles. What made you want to do that?
With Scouts, it was a nice natural transition for me. I'd already been talked to when I was young as a youth leader that I should look into the next steps in Scouts, which at the time was a unit commissioner position at a council level, which transferred into both district and council positions on various activity staffs. So in my case, I was basically in charge of venturing for the Longs Peak Council for a number of years, which is the older youth group, which they kind of demand higher adventure activities. So we'd set up cope courses, rock climbing courses, high adventure campouts. And so doing the logistics and planning for those type of events, because once you're at the event, you can't just spend 20 minutes to go get whatever missing cord. You've got 5 or 6 hours just to get to the nearest town. So doing a lot of planning like that, and plus gave me an excuse to go camping every month. So it was great. I was getting my camping in, and I was helping, and, most of the time it was kind of nice because usually you make the youth do all the cooking, so I was getting free meals out of it.
So within Non-Descon, how did you move up the ranks?
So in Non-Descon, basically what happened was a number of years in logistics, treating it as a side job, and then basically being asked to be a lieutenant in logistics for a couple of years after a reorg. And then the next thing I know, we're talking, and I had built a number of plans for how to organize lines at Non-Descon, because Non-Descon was slowly becoming LineCon at the hotel we were at the time. And as a result, basically, they asked me if I wanted to be an area head in charge of lines. So we split off, made our own department that basically handled the movement of people versus the movement of things and items. And from there, a couple years later, they tagged me because they're asking if they had anybody that was web capable, could run websites, manage websites. And in my day-to-day life, that's what I do all the time, is websites all the time. As a result, they kind of brought me on as an advisor to the board to discuss the website technologies, and the progression basically from there was how do we use technology to enrich parts of the convention, make things easier. And the next thing I know, I'm being asked to be on the board of directors, which in retrospect, should have been kind of obvious when they start bringing you on to do extra stuff.
So what is some of the technology you manage, and what are some of the things you've built for the con?
Well, for the convention, behind the scenes, we have a mostly full-featured back-end website that handles various departments' tasks, anywhere from managing all the cosplay contest logistics, from sign-up to judging to even the convention floor readout of who's up in the cosplay is one section of that site. A lot of the bigger section of the site is how to manage registration, because even though our nice WordPress plugin that we have for registration works well, it doesn't sort the data in the exact same way we need it. So it's kind of deals as just data input, resorting, and then data output the way we need it. One of the biggest functions is the PDF sign maker program that we have, which greatly automated the creation and storage of all the signs that we use for the convention. We used to have a problem where if we needed any given sign for the convention, we had to go to our art department, our marketing department, wait a little while for them to get back to us in InDesign, get the InDesign files back, and there's a lot of back and forth. With that program, I'm really proud because if you know a little bit of HTML, you can make a sign. And then it's made, and people can go view that sign. And matter of fact, other departments can request a sign be printed and then go pick it up in operations during convention.
And the big advantage there, though, is that all the signs have the convention branding. They're not just,
Yes.
a hacked-together plain sign.
Exactly. And not only that, the convention branding is extremely consistent between each different sign type, size, portrait, landscape, etc. So it's an official sign. It looks and acts like an official sign all of the time.
You had also worked on some Slack and texting integration. What is that used for?
So one of the big keys that the board of directors identified several years ago was at convention communication. At the time, our model basically was, everybody was text messaging separately all over the place, and we had a radio system. With our move into a new hotel several years ago, we basically discovered our radio system just wasn't up to the task of talking between the two sides of the hotel. There's too much concrete, too much asphalt on the way. So we're suffering from a major communication problem. And we started looking at it in a couple different ways. One of the key aspects of this communication problem was we needed our operations department to act as the brains of our convention, which is their role in our convention. But they weren't getting the information, and they weren't able to hear the radio conversations as well as they needed. So they needed some sort of central clearinghouse in order to receive communication. And after some reviews and some very, very nice API integrations, Twilio, a company that can handle voice, texts, and now app messaging communications, actually came to the forefront and at a very low pennies per transaction cost, gave us the ability to actually have a phone number for our operations team. And this phone number is great because you can call in and it will forward at the convention to the desk phone that's in operations. And if you call and it's busy, it'll tell you, call back in a couple minutes. We're busy. We're taking another phone call. In turn, if somebody just texts that number, it comes up on a screen in our back-end operations system and lets the operations staff, hey, we've got this message. We need to reply to it. Getting that to operations was great, but we needed to take it one step further, we felt, and basically come up with a communications method for all of the staff. So for last year, we actually tested a system, Slack, which of course is a well-known business-level communications tool that's very popular in a lot of corporations. And we actually integrated into our system, our back-end system, the combination of Slack and Twilio, so that if somebody needs a text message that doesn't have our Slack system, they text message in, and from Twilio or from Slack, we can actually communicate back out using all of our gateways. So it's made communication in and out very seamless and recordable. One of our goals of this project was to maintain an operations log, and now we have a complete log of who calls in, who texts, and who messages from our other systems. Operations loves this because and they really loved it because one of the main messages that came across last year was all of our water canisters for the water stations. Anytime a water station ran out, somebody would just text or in Slack in the operations channel say, water station 11, out of water. And we actually went back, did a little bit of data mining, and determined that which water stations were heavily hit. And next year, we'll make sure there's 2 water stations at each one of those locations. But it was very seamless from we get the message about the water station. And in this case, we actually used the Twilio plugin to text the hotel to refill the water station. And then they'd reply back when it's done.
That sounds like a really good Slack integration, texting stuff. A lot of NonDeskCon is sort of in a basement. What about just, cell phone service? That's not great down there.
Well, the cell phone service itself is an issue. So what we did to mitigate that is we actually have an IndyK wireless network that we've set up, and a lot of key staff, and probably this coming year, most of the staff, will actually have internet connection through that wireless system. So the Wi-Fi network, it's not great when you're skipping between locations. It's better. And that is actually why we ended up with Slack more often as a staff versus the text message system. And we've noticed that that is a limitation where the cell phone network is. We're very eager to be out of that situation when we can so that we have more consistent, but that's how we've gotten around it so far.
You also are the director of logistics. What are some of the logistical challenges that have come up in the recent years?
As director of logistics, outside of the nature of staff and the fact that you really don't know until convention how many you have potentially coming and helping, that being the biggest challenge, just staffing on a volunteer basis for a volunteer convention. The next biggest challenge that we've kind of undertaken is how do we effectively load in, load out, and basically get the equipment to any given room in the convention in a timely manner. With a staff of about 250 to 300, it becomes quite a bit of a challenge when you've only got a logistics staff of 5 to 10 to make sure all the boxes that need to get to a given area actually arrive and that we get the dollies back after they're done. So we're actually working on a number of things there, including integrating our inventorying system with a room-by-room build sheet. The equivalent being our events in panel room 1, we know that it needs boxes 1 and 2 from events and one of the PA systems. If we already know that and have that build list, that means somebody in logistics can put that together, pull that together, load it on a dolly, hand it off to event staff, unload it, bring the dolly back. That's a turnaround time of only a couple minutes versus digging through all the equipment, trying to find, is this the right box? Is this the right box? And actually building that out in such a way. Prior to this, we just had a ton of boxes and a ton of loose items, and we just really didn't know what was needed where until it was time. And then departments made best and made do with what they could do. So the technology change with logistics over time has been very significant, especially since sometimes we can't fit all of our equipment in one room anymore. It's just too many items, too many people in and out.
How are you doing the inventory tracking? Like what software or on paper, or what are you doing?
We do a combination of on paper and into our back-end system. One of the goals for me is that back-end system is partially a continuous improvement system. And we recognize the need for a very basic, simple inventory system where you've got a box, and in the box is multiple items. And then you have a box that would be the standalone box that you would load multiple items in as well. One of the things we did implement a couple years ago is a standard form that is a very simple 3-question form: a quantity count, a description of what an item is, and what condition an item is in. So we have a paper form. Each box gets its own paper form, and each department for all their loose items, such as VGR's TVs, gets their own form. For this year, thanks to improvements in technology, quite honestly, we had all of our department's head come out to storage day. They would pull out their boxes, inventory it on the paper form, and then we used Dropbox to scan and make a PDF of that inventory form, put the paper back in the box so that when it comes time for the convention, they can unload the box, and if they get really close to loading the exact same items in, they just update the inventory form. We scan it again when we pull everything out for storage day the following year. And this allows us to track the inventory over time.
How does the scanning work? Dropbox I think of as file sharing. What is it doing for us?
So the Dropbox app actually has a built-in integrated file scanner now. So it will, from your camera phone, scan that PDF, clean it up, and actually save it to a folder in Dropbox. And it just so happens that I have an NDK folder in Dropbox that I use various APIs to pull that data over into our backend system. So one of the things we're going to actually attach this year and improve in continuous improvement of our simple inventorying warehousing system is a scan of the PDF. So if somebody goes in and says, this isn't right, they can actually go look at what they wrote on the PDF and go, yeah, that's because my handwriting is horrible. One of the best parts of this is because we started implementing this last year, certain departments that closed down early, such as our merchandising department, which happens to have 10 of their own boxes, they actually inventoried before they left the building and had the piece of paper in the box So when it came time for inventory, we pulled out the box, opened the lid, scanned the document, and then basically put a 2018 inventory sticker on the box. We actually managed to inventory something like 20 boxes that way in about 15, 20 minutes, and it was beautiful.
Like, how many total boxes are we talking about here?
IndieK right now currently has about 110 boxes, and we're talking the 16-gallon clear containers that are nice and easy and stackable. And then we have basically about, I'm going to say, 50 standalone loose items, including anything from speaker stands, PA systems, TV sets, Xbox and PS4 gear, coolers. We have several mini refrigerators. I cannot believe how many mini refrigerators it takes to support a convention.
Well, so you said their staff is 250 to 300 people. What's the attendance size that needs this, inventory support?
Inventory support, attendance-wise, or?
We're on the topic of inventory, and you said 110 boxes, another 50 loose items.
Mm-hmm.
Many are mini fridges to support the staff.
Mm-hmm.
What's the actual attendance count like?
So the attendance count at NonDeskCon for the last couple of years, we use the actual sales attendance account. We don't use the turnstile or the taking everything times 3. So our actual warm body head count sits in the 9,000 to 11,000 range. Attendees have varied over the years. The hotel we're currently at can support 10,000 attendees fairly easily. It gets a little crowded, but so we actually did this ratio at one time, but was it 3/10 is what we're kind of feeling? No, that's not right at all. So 10,000 to 300.
10,000 to 300 is 3%.
A 3% staff ratio for about the attendance that we're getting.
So what made you keep doing it all these years?
I really enjoy the convention and the challenge of, attending a convention that in 3 days you have to pull together what would normally some places would be months and months of work. Now, granted, it's months and months of planning, but all of this are fun little challenges for me. And that combined with how I'm volunteering and just the nature of what I do, it's been fun. I have to admit, I do love anime, and I do love sneaking off to the video room and just sitting there vegetating in front of whatever random anime I just walked in on. But in addition to that, and cosplay and other things like crossplay, which is something I enjoy, it's just the community itself and how open and accepting the community is. And just having the skill set to know that I'd rather be behind the scenes helping out versus just sitting there attending and wondering what I'm going to do next. So it's basically 4 extremely busy days that are a nice challenge. And even though it's not drastically different than some days at work, the community and the people that I'm with are drastically different and make it worthwhile.
You mentioned safe space and building community. What are some of the things that, in your position, you do to enable that community to be self-supporting and safe?
I do a number of things. One of the things I do from a community aspect is I've been engaging with various community organizations, especially on the LGBT side, trying to see if they would like to come and present and making those connections. From a safety aspect, I definitely work with our safety department. We've set our standards. Our standards are pretty good. I believe that our code of conduct and the rules of the convention are pretty clear and well laid out in regards to harassment of any type for any reason. And basically, I try to live by those rules myself and stick to that and be open and welcoming. And it's hard sometimes coming into a place and living a little bit of an alternative lifestyle versus what you're normally seeing out in the community. And there's a lot of people that need that safe place that they can come and, let their blue hair down and have fun. And, if you want to wear that Sailor Scout uniform, do it. It's you. That's what you should do. And enabling that. And as long as, everything's covered up and it's still community friendly, we're all for it. And it's fun to also participate in that. Doing that and making sure, and of course in my unique position, because I can view all of the reports as a member of the board of directors and see how things went, I can also go through and see, were we having issues that we need to discuss and make changes for our rules for the following year.
thinking on all your years, either organizing events and scouts and your years with NDK, think about the things you've learned. If you could go back to your younger self and teach your younger self a lesson that would have made those events even better, what lesson would you teach your younger self?
Well, the lesson I teach my younger self is basically, first, be more open. There's a lot of different ideas out there, a lot of different ways to tackle the same exact problem. While I believe that I'm a really good listener and implement well based off of all the feedback, I've noticed over the years that if I can sit there and just calm down a little bit, it will happen. The event's still going to go on. And even if it is not the most perfect thing that you have, that you envisioned, people are still going to have fun. The other thing I definitely tell myself is people really aren't going to pay attention to what's going on. No matter what, you're going to have to say things several times. You're going to have to repeat yourself. You're going to have to reference your website and make them actually look at it sometimes. Likewise, this also means, if you are nervous about doing something or being out there or looking a certain way at a convention, you shouldn't, because no one's paying attention. And if they are paying attention, most likely it's somebody that's like, wow, I wish I could do that too.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Nope, thank you, Jared, and I look forward to listening.
You can learn more about NondeskCon at ndkdenver.org. Show notes and a feedback form are available at conventionalpodcast.com, and you can reach out to me on Twitter at conventionalpod or by email at conventionalpodcast@gmail.com. Please let me know if you have any comments about the show or suggestions for guests. Thanks for listening.